Hey y'all, this your girl Miss Danny Baby back one more again with another video. I saw this article where they're talking about transgenders, y'all. And we know transgender topics are very sensitive, but I was tripping. I wanted to know what the audience thought when they think about a transgender that's competing, especially when we're talking about a transgender woman, which was previously a male that changes and transitions to an actual woman. Do you think that human beings that were born male and have the same bodies basically as a male, but later, years later, they decide that they want to be women, do you think it's fair for them to compete? And the reason why I'm bringing this topic up is because I saw this article, and it's about a sprinter that's in high school in Connecticut, and they actually have a couple of transgender sprinters from what I'm reading, and they're competing against the girls, and they're always winning. I have mixed feelings about that, but let's look at the article real quick. This is them in a race, and this topic has been going on for years. We know that it's not nothing new. And to be respectful in the discourse, I don't want any, name calling, but I'm just saying, do y'all think this is actually fair though? The sprinter in question right here, her name is after, transitioning, her name is Andrea Yearwood. And it says, let's see. Says that the girl is always hearing comments that she should be running, but people tell her it's not against the girls. It says that Yearwood, a 17-year-old junior at Cromwell High School, which is in Connecticut, is one of two transgender high school sprinters in Connecticut transitioning to female. When she recently finished second in the 55-meter dash at the State Open Indoor Track Championships, the winner, Taylor of Bloomfield High, is also transgender and set a girls' state indoor record of 6.95 seconds. Check this out. Girls' state indoor record of 6.95 seconds. And it says that Yearwood finished in 7.0 seconds, and the third place competitor, who was not transgender, finished in 7.23 seconds. And it just goes on about their winnings. Right here it says critics say their gender identity amounts to an unfair advantage, expressing a familiar argument in a complex debate for transgender athletes as they break barriers across sports around the world, from high school to the pros. So I'm going to link this article so you guys can read for yourself and make a decision. But I'm just, if I had a little girl that was in high school or junior school, I think it's a little different when they're like small, like elementary. Girls and boys are pretty much neck and neck. But by the time that puberty starts hitting, and the testosterone levels raise, the muscle mass raises in the boy, it's definitely a difference in the bodies. And I feel like, we have to think long and hard before having transgenders compete against people that were naturally born a certain way. That doesn't mean that a transgender can't identify to whatever sex, that they feel that they are. It's a free country, and nobody can tell you how to think about yourself, and you can follow that destiny how you see fit. That's your choice. If you're a guy and you're growing up and you think that you want to be a girl, that is perfectly your choice. You can wear dresses, you can style your hair a certain way, you can navigate the world pretty much as a woman or a girl, and nobody should have anything to say about it. However, this is where I draw the line. Just my opinion, and you don't have to agree with it. But where I draw the line is when your rights to you reaching your destiny and your ascension actually is parasitic or damaging to the rights of other people. And in this case, the two transgender people are actually winning the race while the girls are consistently losing. The fastest girl that they had was somebody that was third place. What do y'all think about that? Do you think it can lower the morale of the female teenagers to consistently know that they're probably going to lose unless the dude is that the transgender dude, a girl, I don't even know how to say it. Okay, the transgender girl that was used to be in a boy's body is consistently going to win, with rare exception, like if they're sick or something's hurting on them. It has to be something like that, because we know, biologically speaking, in most cases, and we can't go by the exception, we have to go by the rule, y'all. In most cases, men are just stronger than women physically. It doesn't mean that they're smarter or they're mentally stronger, but physically they are in most cases. Who can deny that? Um, and, but at the same time, you don't want the transgender team to feel that way, like they don't belong. But I don't know how society is going to deal with this. Because people will try to play the race argument and say, well, remember when blacks couldn't eat at the same tables and bars as white people thought you were different, and laws were changed so that you could fit in and you can go to white schools. But at the same time, blacks were not hurting the white people. They were not at a disadvantage, um pound for pound, just because they went to school with black kids. You see what I'm saying? um it's not, or at least it shouldn't have been, a morale decreaser just because you have a black kid in your classroom. But if you're a female child or adolescent and you're growing up and you're trying to figure things out about who you are, but you're almost guaranteed to lose, because when you want to participate in sports and you're an athletic girl, some of the people that you're participating with can be guys that are transitioning to female. So I think that could be very damaging, y'all. Just try to be fair, not on some prejudice or, you know, homophobic. And a lot of transgenders don't even feel like they're gay, so I don't even know if homophobic is the proper word, even though there are transgenders that later claim that they're gay. Um, but transgenders want to feel entitled to feel like they are the gender that they claim, and they're not saying that they're homosexual. They're saying that they were born in the right. So it's a big difference in that. It says Connecticut is one of 17 states that allow transgender high school athletes to compete without restrictions. According to transathlete.com. My voice is so scratchy, it doesn't even sound like myself. I'm having a sore throat and coughing up, so y'all have to excuse me if it sounds a little rough in the voice. It says, which tracks state policies in high school sports across the country. Some states have restrictions that make it difficult for transgender athletes to compete while in school, like requiring athletes to compete under the gender on their birth certificate or allowing them to participate only after going through sex reassignment procedures for hormone therapies. And then it says other states either have a no policy or handle the issue on a case-by-case basis. And then the article says that, girls that are not transgender could possibly have some advantages. It says one jumper could be taller and have longer legs than the other. We can't go by the exception though. The exception does not make the rule. Generally speaking, guys are taller than women. Um, says one can have perfect form and do better than the transgender. Okay, again, exception does not make the rule. Um, and it says also because they're competing against someone who's likely to win, hands down, it could be an advantage because it's an unfair advantage to start, so it can simply push her to try to improve. Come on. Okay. That's like if I'm wrestling a dude, if I'm foolish enough to wrestle a dude and he outweighs me probably by 50 pounds, and even if he does weigh the same amount that I weigh, his muscle mass is likely going to be bigger than mine, and he has testosterone aiding and abetting him in this situation. So me going into that knowing that I'm likely going to lose the wrestle competition right off jump, that's gonna make me go harder. I'm at a disadvantage, so that makes it an advantage because I am disadvantaged. Come on, knock it off. This is crazy. So I just wanted to know what your opinion is. Is this something that could actually harm girls? Having to compete with human beings that feel that they're girls, but they were born in male bodies. Can that ever be? What is the solution? I think about that in terms of like, laws regarding bathrooms and, to make transgenders feel comfortable and to allow them uh, life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, which I do feel like they are entitled to. Don't get it twisted. But law, it seems like laws are at the expense of the well-being of others in some cases. Now there's a famous actual entertainer. His name is Paul Rogan. You guys have seen him on that famous show Fear Factor. I used to watch that hard body back in the day. But here's Paul Rogan. I didn't know he was a comedian also. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to actually link the clip to this video at the bottom also. But he talked about this. And I'm going to just play a couple minutes. And I want to know if you guys agree. And he's talking on this issue, except he's not necessarily speaking about kids. He's talking about Fallon Fox, who is actually a wrestler, I believe in like UFC, that was actually secretively competing against grown women in the women's area of it instead of competing against men. And he was actually whooping their asses hands down because he was, stronger. And Joe gives some good commentary, reflective commentary on why exactly this type of thinking does not, or this type of manipulation with society is not quite healthy. Do I have the answer to it? No. The easiest one that I think would probably be fair is that transgenders fight or race and have competitions with other transgenders. Um, at least they're fighting or competing against people that will be on par with them, and no other, gendered person would, or a person born a certain way, born anatomically male or female, would be put in at an advantage or disadvantage. They wouldn't be put at a disadvantage if transgenders were to compete for themselves. But that would be a whole lot of asking for, a big university or a big high school to make a separate league, separate football league for transgenders. I mean, it almost sounds impossible. So how do we fix something like this where nobody is feeling like their rights are being trampled on? In high school, at least when you're underage, you should have some protections there because these are kids and we don't want their self-esteem messed up. Now, in the adult world, it could be a little bit different, but I still think even in the adult world, the UFC and wrestling and stuff like that, people transgenders shouldn't be able to sneak in there and be competing against people that they know that they're way stronger than. I'm gonna pull up a picture of Fallon Fox before I play this Joe Rogan clip, and then I'll end it. But I just want you to get an idea of what this person looks like. Hold on. Okay, y'all, to give you an idea, here we go. This is what dude looked like before he had his operation or was transitioning into a girl, and this is him, or the proper way to say, I guess, would be her, after uh, after surgery and hormones. But look at the jaw structure of this person. Look at the skull. Look how thick the neck is. If we saw him wrestling a normal weight girl, even in his same weight, we would not be too happy about that. Here's some more pictures. But because now this person is taking estrogen, and Joe Rogan goes into why that fallacy about estrogen is not a way to just throw away common sense. He even broke that down, why it's not fair. But I just wanted you, that's Joe Rogan right here. But here's the guy that changed his sex to a girl. But let's get into the Paul Rogan interview, and then I'll end this video. Hold on.
No, but I was fascinated by watching the mob come after me for that.
You've been mobbed before? You have.
Oh, yeah.
What's been the worst?
Oh, one of the big ones was about a trans fighter.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a hilarious one.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you guys can kiss my fucking ass. You're out of your mind. You guys are out of your mind if you think that a man who has been a man for 30 years and has taken female hormones for 2 is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You put Brock Lesnar, chop his dick off and put him in a dress. That guy's going to maul through the women's heavyweight division like nothing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Because we're built different. And it's just a fact. And anyone who tries to argue that is crazy. And there's certainly standouts in terms of women who are much more muscular, higher bone density, particularly African American women have very high bone density. But there's a different shape to their hips. There's the size of the hands, the size of the shoulders. Things are different. Mm-hmm. And also the imprinting of years and years of testosterone. It's just, there was a great article by this board-certified endocrinologist who went over all the things that separate men from women, which should exclude them from competing in combat sports against women. And this woman was called a transphobe, and she's a fucking endocrinologist, you idiot. She's talking about the science. And she's also talking about the science of, one of the things they talk about is how women, or a trans woman, once they transition to being a woman, they're basically biologically almost exactly the same as women. She was like, no. Not only that, but the bone density is retained by taking estrogen, which is what the problem with women when they have osteoporosis is. They're losing estrogen, they lose bone mass. Well, the estrogen actually helps you retain bone mass. So when a man transitions to a woman and then starts taking estrogen, it's actually helping retain the bone mass that he would have lost by not having testosterone. And then on top of that, reaction times, reaction times are several tenths of a second faster in general for women than they are for men rather than they are for even professional athlete women. So all these variables that need to be taken into consideration when you're allowing someone to do a sport. And we're not just talking about bike racing. We're not talking about, something where someone...
Non-contact.
Yeah, we're talking about the most contact. We're talking about fucking fighting. There's benefits that certain people have. There's physical attributes there's variables inside the genders, right? There's some men that have gigantic physical advantages over other men. And all of those are taking into... there's no, even playing field when it comes to even intergender competition or male versus male competition. There's no real level playing field. So the best we can do is say, okay, well, you guys got to be the same weight. Let's just make that.
Yeah.
Make it the same weight. And that's as close as you can get. But even in that, there's people that are just physically, they're just going to be better.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it. There's going to be better athletes. They're going to have better genetics. There's nothing you do about that. But one thing we can do is we can keep women from getting beaten up by men, and men who transition to being women. And if you think that's fair, you're fucking crazy. And it's just not. It doesn't make any sense. And the arguments for it are so shitty and they're so riddled with progressive speak that they're trying to pretend that this is a woman now. This is not a woman. This is a trans woman. This is a male. She has a Y chromosome. She transitioned to being a female. Now she's a trans woman. And if you choose to fight her and you're a woman and you know that she's a trans woman, I'm totally fine with that. But that was not what was going on here. What was going on here was this woman who used to be a man for 32 years transitioned to being a woman, and it didn't tell anybody. And fought two different women who thought they were fighting a woman and got fucking smashed.
Badly injured, yeah.
Well, I was watching it. It was like watching a man fight a woman. That's what I was watching. I was like, this isn't like she wasn't particularly skillful. It wasn't like she had like some unbelievable background in judo, like Ronda Rousey or something like that. It wasn't that. You were just literally watching a former man beat up women who never had the benefit of 30 years plus of testosterone in their body.
What do you think the solution should be then?
I don't know, but I was fascinated by watching the mob come after me for that one.
Yeah.
I was like, this is adorable. What was fascinating about it was, here's something that I'm not I'm not a real expert in physiology or endocrinology, but I'm a martial arts expert. And I've been doing it my whole life. Like, I know the difference. I've trained with women world champions and watched them get mauled by men who are not very good. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to striking. There's more of a gap in jiu-jitsu, or the gap rather closes in jiu-jitsu because skill and technique take precedent over physical strength. But god damn it, when it comes to striking, you could get a man who's been doing it for 6 months, but just happens to have a lot of fast twitch muscle fiber and just knows how to hit things hard, and he'll fuck a woman up. It's not good, especially when it comes to kickboxing and kicking and punching. There's so many advantages, and to say that those advantages are immediately cut out of the picture as soon as you transition to being a woman, and within 2 years you should be able to fight women in a cage and not tell them that you're a woman. I was like, this is insanity.
So there you have it, guys. That was Paul Rogan's, feelings on the matter as far as like transgenders competing against the gender that they identify with. He thinks it's unfair. I seem to think that as well. We don't have the WNBA for nothing. Those women can't compete necessarily with the guys. We're not going to have a group of women joining the NFL. It's not going to happen. Those dudes would maul regular women. If you had transgenders, or if it was a reverse situation where it was the NFL, which is basically dudes, and then you put women who thought that they were guys, in the mix with that. There's no competition there. So I don't know why we're imposing this kind of stuff on youngsters when their sense of self is still developing. I just think this is something that we should not impose on children. Quick side note also, before I forget, while we're talking about this topic, the reason why this type of sloppiness in the socialization of in our children's lives, because we're trying to be fair to we're trying to be fair to transgenders, quote unquote cis, which is basically female born children that are born anatomically female, their rights and desires are being pushed to the side. So it's very dangerous when you have outside forces infiltrating and being allowed to infiltrate. It's like there's no safe spaces for the female kids. I'm not even saying that this transgender child is on some predatory shit, though. It's not Andrea's fault that the rules are that they are, and she personally probably feels that it's to her advantage, which it is. I mean, she's winning all the races. But I don't think that she's subconsciously trying to hurt anyone herself. But I think the rules that are allowing persons like her infiltrate spaces that she doesn't honestly fit in the categories. It's an unfair advantage. It's silencing the female kids. Okay, and this is a very dangerous precedent. I don't know where this is going to lead. That is very murky. I will just say that. But I don't even like the way that transgenders call naturally born girls cis. You know, they're giving us other names that they want us to have. But you better identify them by their their desired pronoun. But they can just slap a name on anatomical girls and women. It's just quite weird, and I just see some unfairness just building and building and building. So this is something fascinating but horrifying to watch at the same time. But what the remedy is for transgendered children is, I don't know. And I would like to know if you guys have thought about something like this, because this could happen, especially for you guys that have kids that are growing up. This is the day and age in the world that we live in. So I would love to hear your comments. Let me know what you think. When we're talking about just jobs, like maybe like an officer where you're dependent on a weapon to defend you most of the time. I think even in that field is dangerous for women, but at least the gun is somewhat of like an equalizer. And she can play the support position to a lot of male cops. They'll be there to help, and a lot of times, like with cops, it's a collective effort. They all ambush somebody if they need be. But we can even think in terms of that it should be questionable. If the woman can perform the job that is necessary, I think she should be allowed to work that job, even though there are certain fields I personally would not gravitate towards, because I have a tomboy spirit at times, but I'm really, at the end of the day, real girly. So there are certain jobs that I wouldn't gravitate towards, but that doesn't mean another woman that feels that she can do a certain job shouldn't be allowed to do it if she can be effective in her role. But when we're not talking about a job here, we're talking about competition, where we're competing and showing who's the better athlete. And when we're talking about realms where people are competing for certain type of activities and arts and things of that nature, then they should be competing with their peers. And a transgender person is not a true peer. That's not to say that their mind doesn't think a certain way, and they don't have the right to feel a certain way about who they are. But when we're talking about physical competition, it's not a true peer. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't want this to be too long and drawn out, and I'm gonna have to edit it as it is. But tell me what you think, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.